In the summer of 2024, Dave Filoni dropped a bombshell that changed everything we thought we knew about the galaxy's most enigmatic species. During a routine interview, the Star Wars creative mastermind casually revealed that Frank Oz had once told him something extraordinary. Yoda's distinctive backward speech pattern wasn't a quirk of his alien biology, but rather spoken in honor of his own master. This single revelation cracked open a mystery that George Lucas had spent nearly 5 decades protecting, and suggested that somewhere in the vast, unexplored corners of Star Wars lore lies a figure so significant that even after 900 years, the galaxy's greatest Jedi Master still honors them with every word he speaks. But this was just the beginning. As 2025 dawned with new footage of the Mandalorian and Grogu movie premiering at Star Wars Celebration Japan, fans realized they'd been overlooking dozens of forgotten clues, abandoned storylines, and creator statements that paint a far more complex picture of the species than anyone imagined. What emerges isn't just a story of 3 individuals, but evidence of a civilization, a philosophy, and perhaps even a tragedy that the galaxy has systematically forgotten. For nearly half a century, Yoda's species has remained Star Wars' greatest intentional mystery, but recent revelations and forgotten lore suggest we've been asking the wrong questions entirely. Rather than seeking their name or homeworld, the evidence points to something far more profound. This isn't just a rare species that happens to produce powerful Jedi, but potentially the remnants of the Force's original guardians. Ancient beings whose very existence challenges everything we think we know about the Jedi Order's origins and the true nature of the Force itself. The story begins not in a galaxy far, far away, but in a casual 2024 interview where Dave Filoni shattered 4 decades of assumptions with a single sentence. When asked about the speech differences between Yoda and Yaddle in Tales of the Jedi, Filoni revealed Frank Oz's long-hidden explanation. Yoda's backward syntax isn't biological, it's memorial. This revelation immediately recontextualizes everything. If Yoda speaks backwards to honor his master, then somewhere in his past exists a figure significant enough to influence his speech for 9 centuries. Think about the implications. Yoda began training Jedi around 100 years old, meaning he maintained this speech pattern throughout 800 years of teaching, through the Clone Wars, through exile on Dagobah, and even as a Force ghost. This isn't casual respect, this is profound, lasting devotion. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. In 2024, George Lucas's 2005 interview resurfaced where he admitted, "I never really figured out where he came from, what his species is called." This wasn't oversight, it was intentional creative protection. Lucas deliberately constructed Yoda as what he called a mystery character with no background. Yet if Frank Oz knew about Yoda's master, this suggests Lucas had at least some backstory in mind, backstory he chose never to reveal. The mystery deepens when we examine Yaddle's canonical portrayal. Unlike Yoda, she speaks in standard basic syntax, as demonstrated in her single canonical dialogue scene. Speaking on behalf of the Council, there's no reason to cause undue alarm. If speech patterns were species-wide, both Yoda and Yaddle would share them. Their linguistic differences suggest individual history rather than biological imperative. This linguistic divide becomes even more significant when we consider that Yaddle lived 477 years, while Yoda reached nearly 900. If both were trained in traditional Jedi methods, why would only Yoda maintain this archaic speech pattern? The answer may lie in their respective masters and what those teaching relationships reveal about the species' forgotten past. What makes this 2024 revelation truly game-changing is its timing. Just as Disney prepares to explore Grogu's story in the upcoming theatrical film, we're learning that the speech patterns that defined Yoda for generations weren't arbitrary creative choices, but narrative breadcrumbs leading back to untold stories. Every time Yoda spoke, he was commemorating someone whose identity remains one of Star Wars' deepest secrets. When you analyze the mathematics behind Yoda's species, the patterns become impossible to ignore. In a galaxy containing trillions of sentient beings across thousands of worlds, exactly 3 members of this species appear in recorded galactic history: Yoda, Yaddle, and Grogu. But it's not just their rarity that defies explanation, it's their perfect correlation with Force sensitivity and Jedi service. Consider the statistical impossibility. 100% of known species members possess exceptional Force abilities, and 100% serve the Jedi Order in some capacity. This isn't just unlikely in a galaxy where force sensitivity affects roughly 1 in a million beings. It's mathematically absurd unless there's something fundamentally different about the species' relationship with the force. The timeline makes it even stranger. Yoda lived from approximately 896 before the Battle of Yavin to 4. After the Battle of Yavin, training Jedi for over 800 years. Yaddle existed from around 509 BBY to 32 BBY, serving on the Jedi High Council. Grogu was born in 41 BBY and trained at the Jedi Temple until Order 66. Their lifespans overlap significantly, yet there's no record of them acknowledging their shared heritage or discussing their species' origins. This silence becomes more meaningful when you realize that Ahsoka Tano, in her canonical dialogue from The Mandalorian, confirms Grogu is only the second living being of his species she's encountered, the first being Yoda. If Ahsoka, who worked closely with the Jedi Council, only knew of 2 members, what happened to knowledge of Yaddle and potentially others? The age progression patterns are equally mysterious. Stuart Freeborn's original Empire Strikes Back script describes Yoda as not more than 2 feet tall and wizened, while Grogu at 50 years old is still considered an infant. If Grogu reaches Yoda's size and appearance at 900 years, that suggests an aging process so gradual it's almost immortal by galactic standards. But here's the detail history forgot. In early drafts, Lucas named Yoda Minch Yoda, suggesting he originally envisioned the character having both a personal and species name. The fact that Minch was removed rather than expanded upon suggests Lucas made a deliberate choice to erase rather than develop the species' identity. The mathematical impossibility of their force sensitivity, combined with their perfect Jedi service record and deliberately obscured origins, suggests this isn't a naturally occurring species at all. The evidence points towards something more extraordinary, beings whose very existence is tied to the Force itself, possibly remnants of an ancient order that predates the Jedi by millennia. The most revealing insights about Yoda's species come not from databank entries or behind-the-scenes documentaries, but from the scripts themselves, primary sources that capture dialogue and descriptions in their rawest form. These scriptable documents reveal forgotten details and contradictions that reshape our understanding of the species entirely. In the original Empire Strikes Back screenplay, Yoda's first description reads, "A strange bluish creature not more than 2 feet tall. The wizened little thing is dressed in rags." Notice 3 crucial details: bluish rather than green, strange rather than familiar, and wizened suggesting age beyond typical biological parameters. This original description implies Yoda appeared alien even by Star Wars standards, reinforcing his status as something unprecedented in the galaxy. The script dialogue becomes even more revealing when Yoda discusses his longevity. "For 800 years have I trained Jedi, but in Return of the Jedi," he states, "when 900 years old you reach, look as good you will not." This means Yoda began training Jedi at approximately 100 years old, remarkably young for a species that considers 50-year-olds infants. What's forgotten in most discussions is how the Return of the Jedi script handles Yoda's death. "Soon will I rest. Yes, forever sleep. Earned it, I have." The word earned is crucial. It suggests his long life wasn't natural longevity, but something achieved through service or purpose. This aligns with his later statement, "Pass on what you have learned, Luke. There is another Sky Walker." Yoda's death seems tied to completing his mission rather than biological failure. The scripts reveal even more when we examine Yaddle's sole canonical dialogue from Tales of the Jedi. Unlike Yoda's inverted syntax, she speaks normally. A Sith Lord is not to be trifled with, but her tone and word choice mirror Yoda's philosophical approach, suggesting shared cultural or educational background despite different speech patterns. The Mandalorian transcripts add another layer of mystery. When Ahsoka reveals Grogu's background, she states he was raised at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, where he was trained by many Jedi Masters. The phrase "many masters" is significant. Most Padawans train under one master, but Grogu apparently required multiple teachers, just as Yoda would later train 800 years worth of Jedi. Perhaps most intriguing is what the scripts don't say. In Attack of the Clones, Yaddle simply disappears from the Jedi Council with no explanation in the screenplay. It wasn't until Tales of the Jedi that her death was canonically explained. She died confronting Count Dooku after discovering his alliance with Darth Sidious. For 2 decades, 1/3 of the known species simply vanished from the narrative without comment. The script evidence suggests a pattern. Members of this species appear during galactic crises, serve crucial roles in maintaining balance, then fade from prominence or die protecting others. Yoda emerges during the Republic's decline, trains Luke during the Empire's dominance, then passes into the Force. Yaddle serves during the Sith's return, discovers the conspiracy, then sacrifices herself. Grogu survives Order 66, bridges old and new orders, then chooses a different path entirely. These aren't coincidences. The scripts reveal beings whose very existence seems calibrated to galactic need, appearing precisely when the Force requires guidance and departing when their purpose is fulfilled. The most forgotten aspect of Yoda's species mystery lies not in canonical sources, but in the production decisions that shape their creation choices that reveal a deliberate pattern of concealment spanning nearly 5 decades. George Lucas didn't accidentally create a mysterious species. He engineered one, and the evidence suggests his reasons went far deeper than simple storytelling intrigue. Stuart Freeborn's creation process tells the first part of this story. In a recently resurfaced 1979 interview, Freeborn revealed his original Yoda design was far more unsettling, a creepy, gnome-like creature that Lucas rejected. The final version combined Freeborn's own facial features with Albert Einstein's, creating what Lucas described as the illegitimate child of Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy. This wasn't random humor. Lucas was signaling that Yoda's creation drew from both scholarly wisdom, Einstein, and beloved entertainment figures, Muppets, making him simultaneously profound and approachable. But Lucas's most revealing statement came later. If that puppet had not worked, the whole film would have been down the tubes. This admission reveals the enormous risk Lucas took creating Yoda. In 1980, audiences expected aliens to be either monsters or humanoids. Lucas bet the entire sequel on a puppet that defied every science fiction convention, and that calculated risk tells us everything about his intentions. The mystery deepens when we examine what Lucas chose not to develop. Pre-Phantom Menace, Lucasfilm actively discouraged licensees from exploring Yoda's species in comics, novels, or games. This wasn't passive oversight, it was active protection. When fans created expanded universe members like Minch, Oteg, or Vandar Takare, Lucas allowed them to exist in secondary continuity, but never incorporated them into films or primary canon. Dave Filoni's recent revelations add another layer to this protection strategy. In 2024, he admitted he initially opposed creating Grogu for The Mandalorian, fearing it would diminish Yoda's mystery. Only Jon Favreau's argument that they could explore the mystery while preserving it convinced Filoni to proceed. Even 40 years after Yoda's creation, Lucas's original vision still influences creative decisions. The most significant forgotten detail emerged from Filoni's 2024 convention appearance. When fans pressed him about Grogu's family or species origins, Filoni replied, "If I told you I did, it would just be so sad for you." This isn't creative secrecy, it's emotional protection. Filoni's response suggests the truth about Yoda's species isn't mysterious but tragic, something that would fundamentally change how audiences view these beloved characters. Consider Lucas's original creative philosophy. He designed Yoda as the exact opposite of audience expectations for a Jedi Master. Instead of a tall, powerful warrior, audiences met a small, humble hermit. Instead of providing exposition about galactic history, Yoda spoke in riddles and backward syntax. Every choice was designed to subvert expectations while maintaining dignity and wisdom. This pattern extends to species development. Lucas could have revealed their name, homeworld, or origins in the prequels, sequels, or expanded media. Instead, he maintained their mystery through multiple trilogies, spin-offs, and continuity reboots. The species remains unnamed, not because Lucas forgot to name them, but because naming them would fundamentally alter their narrative function. Recent production evidence supports this theory. The Mandalorian's Grogu puppet cost approximately $5 million and requires multiple operators, suggesting Disney's commitment to practical effects mirrors Lucas's original philosophy. Even in the digital age, this species remains grounded in physical reality rather than CGI spectacle. The puppet master's agenda becomes clear. Lucas created Yoda's species not to be understood, but to embody the Force's mystery itself. They're not characters with backstories, they're living symbols of the unknowable, designed to remind audiences that some truths transcend explanation. Among the most overlooked mysteries in Star Wars history is what happened to Yaddle and why her disappearance went unexplained for over 2 decades. When Attack of the Clones premiered in 2002, audiences expected to see the same Jedi Council from The Phantom Menace, but Yaddle's chair sat empty, with no explanation. For 20 years, 1/3 of Yoda's species simply vanished from canon with no official account of her fate. The silence around Yaddle's absence becomes more significant when you consider her unique position in Jedi hierarchy. According to canonical sources, she was not only a Jedi Master, but had trained Oppa Rancisis, who also served on the Jedi Council. This means she was accomplished enough to train another council member, yet her departure from the council warranted no explanation in the films themselves. What makes Yaddle's story even more intriguing is how different she was from Yoda, despite sharing the same species. While Yoda became known for his backward syntax and mysterious teachings, Yaddle spoke in clear, standard basic, and focused on scholarly pursuits. Her normal speech patterns proved that Yoda's distinctive language wasn't species-wide, suggesting individual rather than biological traits. The canonical explanation for Yaddle's fate finally came in 2022's Tales of the Jedi, where she discovers Count Dooku's alliance with Darth Sidious and confronts him directly. But her death scene reveals something forgotten about the species' relationship with the dark side. Yaddle demonstrates she could have easily defeated Dooku in combat, but chooses sacrifice instead of violence. This scene carries profound implications. Yaddle's powers clearly exceeded Dooku's abilities. She casually deflects his Force lightning and shows no fear of his lightsaber skills. Her choice to die protecting others rather than eliminate a Sith Lord suggests this species operates under moral constraints that supersede even Jedi teachings. But here's the detail that history forgot. Yaddle's death occurred approximately 32 BBY, the same year as the Phantom Menace. This means she died shortly after first encountering Anakin Skywalker, the Chosen One, who would eventually become Darth Vader. The timing suggests her sacrifice might have been connected to protecting Anakin's potential, though this connection remains unexplored in canon. Even more intriguing is what Yaddle's sacrifice reveals about the species' approach to the Force. Unlike traditional Jedi, who would attempt to redeem fallen comrades, Yaddle immediately recognizes Dooku as irredeemable. Her instant assessment suggests this species possesses an intuitive understanding of the Force that transcends normal Jedi perceptions. The forgotten tragedy of Yaddle extends beyond her individual story. Her death reduced the known species population by 33% in a single generation, and no other members emerged to replace her. This wasn't just the loss of a Jedi Master, it was a potentially catastrophic blow to an already endangered species. What's most overlooked about Yaddle's story is how it parallels both Yoda's and Grogu's later choices. Yoda would eventually choose exile and training Luke over direct confrontation with the Empire. Grogu would choose protection under the Mandalorians rather than traditional Jedi training. All three members of the species consistently prioritize preservation and guidance over direct conflict, even when they possess the power to enforce their will. The council chamber where Yaddle once sat remained empty throughout the Clone Wars, a visual reminder of her sacrifice that audiences saw but never questioned. For 2 decades, every Jedi Council scene contained a memorial to her loss that went completely unacknowledged in dialogue or exposition. Before Disney's acquisition reset Star Wars continuity, the expanded universe revealed a dramatically different picture of Yoda's species, one populated by multiple members whose stories have now been erased from official canon, but whose existence raises profound questions about what Disney chose to preserve and what they chose to forget. In Legends continuity, the species included numerous additional members: Minch, an ancient Jedi Master who trained on Ossus; Oteg, a Jedi Master from the Old Republic era who lived over 1,000 years; and Vandar Tokare, who served during the Jedi Civil War alongside Revan. These characters weren't minor background figures, they were central to major galactic events spanning millennia. Perhaps most significantly, Legends established that the species had been influential in galactic affairs for thousands of years before Yoda's birth. Oteg, for instance, fought against the Sith Empire during the Great Galactic War and lived through multiple galactic catastrophes. This suggested the species wasn't randomly rare, but had been systematically reduced through conflict and time. The Legends timeline revealed patterns that current canon obscures. Multiple species members consistently appeared during periods of galactic upheaval: Vandar during the Jedi Civil War, Oteg during the Great Galactic War, Minch during the ancient Sith conflicts, and Yoda during the Clone Wars and Galactic Civil War. Rather than coincidence, This suggested the species was actively drawn toward, possibly responsible for maintaining galactic balance during crisis periods. What's most intriguing about the Legends continuity is how it handled the species' origins. While never definitively explaining their homeworld or name, Legends materials hinted at connections to the ancient Jedi Order on Typhon and suggested the species might have been among the original Force users. This background provided a logical explanation for their universal Force sensitivity and natural affinity for Jedi philosophy. The Knights of the Old Republic games, now relegated to Legends, featured Vandar Tokare as a key character who trained multiple generations of Jedi during the galaxy's most turbulent era. His presence in those stories suggested the species had been guiding galactic events for millennia, not just a few centuries covered in the films. But here's what Disney's canon reset truly erased: the suggestion that Yoda's species might have been the galaxy's original Force guardians, present at the birth of both Jedi and Sith traditions. Legends materials never confirmed this theory, but the evidence pointed toward ancient origins that predated recorded galactic history. The most forgotten aspect of Legends continuity involves the species' potential connections to other Force-sensitive groups. Various expanded universe sources hinted at relationships between Yoda's species and ancient orders like the Qua, the Gree, and other precursor civilizations. These connections suggested the species might have been part of a galactic network of Force guardians that maintained balance across the galaxy. When Disney reset the continuity in 2014, they kept only Yoda, Yaddle, and Grogu as canonical species members. This wasn't just narrative simplification, it was a fundamental shift from a species with ancient galactic influence to one defined primarily by mystery and rarity. The choice reflects different storytelling philosophies. Legends emphasized expansion and explanation, while Disney focuses on preservation and mystique. The Legends continuity also provided logical explanations for the species' characteristics. Their longevity, Force sensitivity, and wisdom weren't mysterious traits, but evolutionary adaptations developed over millennia of serving as galactic guardians. Disney's reset transformed explained characteristics back into inexplicable mysteries. What remains most significant about the Legends materials is how they demonstrated that George Lucas's mystery could coexist with expanded storytelling. The expanded universe revealed dozens of species, members across thousands of years, while still maintaining the essential mystery of their origins and ultimate purpose. The most revolutionary development in understanding Yoda's species came not from ancient history or creator revelations, but from a 50-year-old infant's choice in The Mandalorian Season 2. When Grogu chose the Beskar chainmail over Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, he became the first canonical member of his species to reject traditional Jedi training, a decision that fundamentally challenges everything we thought we knew about their relationship with the Force. This choice carries profound implications that most fans have overlooked. For over 40 years, every known member of the species had served the Jedi Order without exception. Yoda trained Jedi for 800 years. Yaddle served on the High Council. Even infant Grogu received formal Jedi training at the Temple. But Grogu's rejection of Luke's teaching represents an unprecedented break with species tradition. What makes this choice even more significant is its timing. Grogu made this decision after experiencing both Jedi training and Mandalorian culture, suggesting he understood what he was choosing between. This wasn't instinctive preference, but informed decision-making, implying a level of wisdom that transcends his apparent age. The canonical implications ripple through everything we think we know about the species. If Force sensitivity and Jedi service aren't inevitable for this species, then what we interpreted as biological destiny might actually be cultural conditioning. Grogu's choice suggests previous species members chose the Jedi path rather than being compelled by nature. Jon Favreau's 2025 interview reveals additional context for this revolutionary decision. He emphasized that the Mandalorian and Grogu film will explore parent-child relationship themes rather than traditional Jedi narratives. This suggests Grogu's choice wasn't rejection of the Force, but embrace of family bonds over institutional service. The forgotten detail that makes Grogu's choice even more meaningful involves his original training. The Mandalorian transcripts reveal he was trained by many Jedi Masters at the Temple, not just one. This mirrors Yoda's later role training multiple generations of Jedi, suggesting the species naturally serves as bridge between different Force traditions rather than adherence to single doctrines. Grogu's Force abilities after leaving Luke's training remain remarkably powerful and diverse. He demonstrates telekinesis, healing, force communication, and even beast-taming abilities with the Rancor. His continued Force development outside Jedi structure proves the species' connection to the Force transcends institutional training. What's most overlooked about Grogu's choice is how it parallels but inverts Yoda's path. Yoda began as a Jedi, served the Order for centuries, then retreated into exile to train one final student. Grogu began with Jedi training, experienced family bonds, then chose family over institutional service. Both paths involve teaching and guidance, but through radically different approaches. The species' implications become even more profound when you consider that Grogu's choice creates the first known family unit involving a species member. Din Djarin's adoption of Grogu represents something unprecedented in canonical species history, a member choosing personal bonds over galactic service. Dave Filoni's 2024 statement that revealing Grogu's family origins would just be so sad takes on new meaning in this context. Perhaps the tragedy isn't what happened to Grogu's biological family, but what the species sacrificed by dedicating themselves entirely to galactic service rather than personal relationships. Grogu's choice also raises profound questions about species survival. If future generations follow Grogu's example and choose family over Jedi service, how might this affect the galaxy's force balance? The species that provided 800 years of Jedi training might evolve into something entirely different. The upcoming Mandalorian and Grogu film will likely explore these implications further, potentially revealing whether Grogu's choice represents species evolution or dangerous departure from ancient purpose. Either way, his decision has already rewritten the fundamental assumptions about what it means to belong to Yoda's species. The most profound mystery surrounding Yoda's species isn't their unnamed homeworld or missing origins, it's the linguistic evidence pointing toward a lost civilization of Force Masters whose influence shaped galactic history in ways we've barely begun to understand. Dave Filoni's 2024 revelation that Yoda's backward speech honors his own master opened a door to investigating language patterns that reveal forgotten truths about the species' past. Traditional linguistics would suggest that if Yoda's inverted syntax were species-wide, all members would share it. But canonical evidence proves the opposite. Yaddle speaks in Standard Basic, Grogu demonstrates no speech inversion, and only Yoda maintains the distinctive pattern. This means Yoda's speech isn't biological, but cultural or linguistic memorial maintained across 9 centuries of life. The implications are staggering. For Yoda to maintain this speech pattern throughout 800 years of training Jedi, his reverence for this unnamed master must be profound beyond typical teacher-student relationships. Consider that Yoda would have encountered thousands of Jedi, trained hundreds of Padawans, and witnessed the rise and fall of entire galactic governments, yet never abandoned this linguistic tribute. What's forgotten in most discussions is how Yoda's speech patterns affected his teaching methods. His inverted syntax forces listeners to process information differently, requiring active engagement rather than passive reception. This suggests his master's teaching philosophy emphasized transformation of thought patterns, not just transfer of information. The linguistic evidence becomes even more intriguing when examined across different contexts. Yoda maintains his inverted syntax in casual conversation, formal Jedi Council meetings, combat situations, and even while dying. This consistency suggests the speech pattern serves purposes beyond simple memorial. It's a fundamental aspect of how he processes and expresses understanding of the Force. Frank Oz's revelation to Dave Filoni adds another layer to this mystery. The fact that Yoda's performer knew about the Master's significance suggests George Lucas had developed at least some backstory for this figure, even if he chose never to reveal it. This hidden knowledge implies a deeper mythology surrounding the species that remains deliberately concealed. But here's the detail that changes everything. If Yoda's speech honors his master, and if his master was significant enough to merit 9 centuries of linguistic memorial, then this unnamed figure might be one of the most important Force users in galactic history. The reverence suggests someone who fundamentally shaped Yoda's understanding of the Force itself. The linguistic patterns also reveal something crucial about species culture. The fact that Yaddle and Grogu don't share Yoda's speech patterns suggests individual choice in honoring teachers, implying a species culture that values personal connection over standardized tradition. This would explain why all known members become powerful Force users. They're taught to develop personal relationships with the Force rather than follow institutional doctrine. Contemporary language evolution theory suggests that maintaining archaic speech patterns across centuries requires constant conscious effort. Yoda's commitment to this linguistic memorial represents a level of dedication that transcends normal cultural preservation, its active spiritual practice. The timing of Filoni's revelation is particularly significant, as Disney prepares to explore Grogu's future in the Mandalorian and Grogu film. Learning about the depth of Yoda's connection to his own master provides crucial context for understanding species relationships and Force development. What remains most tantalizing about this linguistic mystery is what it suggests about the broader species' history. If Yoda honored his master through speech, and if this master was influential enough to merit such devotion, then somewhere in the species' past exists a figure whose teachings shaped galactic understanding of the Force for nearly a millennium. The language of lost masters isn't just about syntax and grammar, it's about the preservation of wisdom, the honor of memory, and the possibility that the most important Force user in galactic history remains completely unknown to current audiences. After examining decades of evidence, creator statements, and forgotten lore, a pattern emerges that reframes everything we thought we knew about Yoda's species. They aren't randomly rare or accidentally mysterious, they're the living remnants of something far more significant. The Force's original guardians, systematically preserving galactic balance through cycles of crisis and renewal. The mathematical impossibility of their universal Force sensitivity, their perfect correlation with galactic crises, and their consistent roles as teachers and guides aren't coincidences. Every piece of evidence points toward a species whose very existence is calibrated to galactic need, appearing precisely when the Force requires guidance and fading when their purpose is fulfilled. George Lucas's deliberate preservation of their mystery wasn't creative oversight, but recognition of their narrative function. They aren't characters to be explained, but symbols to be experienced, living embodiments of the Force's unknowable nature and its tendency to work through humble, unexpected vessels. The recent revelations about Yoda's speech patterns honoring his master, combined with the species' consistent appearance during galactic upheavals, suggest an ancient succession of Force guardians spanning millennia, each honoring their predecessors while guiding their civilizations through darkness toward light. Grogu's unprecedented choice to embrace family over institutional service doesn't break this pattern, it evolves it. His decision suggests the next phase of species development, from galactic servants to family protectors, maintaining Force balance through personal bonds rather than institutional authority. The true mystery of Yoda's species isn't their name, homeworld, or origins. It's whether their apparent role as the Force's living agents represents conscious purpose or unconscious evolution, and what their presence in our galaxy means for the eternal balance between light and dark. As we prepare for the Mandalorian and Grogu's theatrical debut in 2026, we stand at a unique moment in Star Wars history. For the first time in nearly 5 decades, we may learn whether the galaxy's most mysterious species will continue their ancient role as Force guardians or evolve into something entirely new. Dave Filoni's cryptic warning that revealing the truth about Grogu's family would just be so sad suggests the species' past holds tragedy as profound as their mystery. Perhaps what we've interpreted as rarity is actually lost to survivors of something beautiful and terrible that the galaxy has systematically forgotten. But the evidence also points toward hope. Grogu's choice to embrace both Force abilities and family bonds might represent not abandonment of ancient purpose, but its natural evolution. Instead of serving the galaxy by sacrificing personal connections, perhaps the next generation will serve by demonstrating that love and duty aren't mutually exclusive. The mysteries that history forgot, Yoda's master, Yaddle's sacrifice, Grogu's unprecedented choice, aren't separate stories but chapters in an ongoing saga of beings whose very existence challenges our understanding of the Force itself. They remind us that in a galaxy filled with political conflicts and technological wonders, the most profound truths remain hidden in the hearts of small, humble creatures who choose wisdom over power and service over glory. In the end, perhaps that's the point George Lucas was making all along. The greatest strength in the galaxy belongs not to emperors or chosen ones, but to ancient teachers who honor their masters, sacrifice for others, and guide the lost toward light no matter what species they claim as home.